Welcome to the Black Lodge Games review of Cults of Zahak. Now, Cults of Zahak is a book that we wrote and we published, so you'll have to take this review with a grain of salt, but it's really more of a walkthrough and an explanation of the contents of this book and why you may be interested in getting it. This is a book that I am so incredibly proud of. I think it's the best thing that we've written. It's really, really good. And it presents a very dark fantasy world for you to play in and for you to draw from in your own games. Now, this is not a D20 system. This is based off of D100 systems, so it's going to work with things like Mithras or BRP, even Pendragon you could use, but it's built from the bones of Mithras Imperative. This is not a full game in itself. You do need a D100 rule set, but basically any D100 game you're going to be able to use this with. It's very, very simple to slot in. However, since it is built from Mithras Imperative, which is the free rule set, condensed rule set, that is published by the Design Mechanism, they published the Mithras Imperative rule set under the Orc license. So this is the full game of Mithras. This is going to give you everything that's in Mithras Imperative, plus a lot more. But all you need to actually run Cults of Zahak, if you want, is to go to the Design Mechanism website or to DriveThruRPG and download Mithras Imperative for free. Since it was published under the Orc license, we were able to draw from it and make this, and this, Cults of Zahak, is also published under the Orc license as well. So it's open material. You can use everything in this book, at least from the perspective of the text. There's artwork and whatnot in here that you can't use because it's under copyright, and we'll go through the art in here, which is quite good, by the way, in a little bit of detail. But you can use this to make your own stuff. You can use our magic system. You can use the antagonists, the cults, anything that you want. You can use to publish your own RPG resources as well. But the thing that we are hoping everyone does is to take the magic system in here, take the antagonists in here, take the adventure in here, and use that because it's so good. So the full game of Mithras has something like 5 full magic systems. It's like folk magic, animism, theism, sorcery, mysticism. And this has a 6th system of magic called Diabolism, which is going to be very evil magic. It's extremely evil. So you can easily slot this in and use this with the full version of Mithras if you want, since it's built from that same base system. Would take essentially no adaptation at all. If you want to use it with BRP, very easy. You would take maybe minor tweaks, but probably not even that. You can use it with pretty much anything, and it's going to work really well in games that are of mythic fantasy, or if you're doing something historical, like mytho-historical, like Mythic Constantinople or something along those lines. Even Pendragon you could probably use this in. Mythic Britain, something along those lines. You can use this in there very, very easily, and we're going to tell you exactly why. So what is Cults of Zahak? Cults of Zahak is primarily a GM resource. At least that's the way that we considered it while writing it. This is a book that has a lot of pre-built antagonists. It has multiple diabolical evil cults that you can slot into your game. They are tied to a fantasy world that we have in this game, but they are written in a general enough way that they can be slotted into basically any game. And the way that we structured that was to have each cult be based on one of the cultural backgrounds that you'll find in Mithras Imperative. So you have your barbarian societies, your primitive societies, civilized, and nomadic. So we have a cult for each one of those that has their own lore, their own antagonists within it. It's really quite good. And we have a random encounter table for each one of those cults, as you'll see in here. So you can draw your players in, and it can be organic. You don't have to try to railroad them through something. You can get them drawn into the mystery. Although certain cults in here are quite hostile and quite deadly. So your players may end up fighting them very quickly, which would be good, because this is a book full of really evil people. It's a book of villainy and just terrible evil antagonists. It's not the book of vile darkness. It's not, an attempt to be edgelords or anything like that. What we wanted to do was take a fantasy world, take it very, very seriously, and examine what is true evil in a mythic historical world. And I think we have something really, really special here. It's awesome. But since we did provide the entire magic system and the cult advancement path and whatnot for the evil people within these cults, you could also potentially run these as player characters. Or one of your players, if you have a mature group, You could have one of your players secretly being one of these guys, and they are super, super bad. So I don't know if that's going to be appealing to people. That's not what we wrote it. It's not our intent that you try to play the people in this book, but you certainly could if you wanted to. But it's a book that has a lot of mature content in it, and I don't mean that it's not overly gory or sexual or anything along those lines. It's just that we're dealing with what we consider to be very, very evil things that your players, antagonists that your players hopefully will just demand to destroy, because in order to have great heroism you have to have great villainy and great evil to fight. So hopefully your players are going to look at what you put on the table with this and go, oh my God, we have to kill these people. They must be stopped. That's the intent. Now, this is a drive-through RPG copy. We kickstarted this book late last year and released backer codes for people to order their copies through drive-through RPG roughly a month ago at this point, I think. We're giving a window basically of exclusivity to the Kickstarter backers to get their books before anyone else can order them. The PDF is certainly online for you right now. As of recording, it's already online. But the physical book hopefully will be ready for you to order as well. We just want to give our, the people who made this book possible, we want to give them first access to it, obviously. But without further ado, let's look inside at what Cults of Zahak is. And oh man, I am so proud of this. So Cults of Zahak, it is about 150 pages total. We have, at the very beginning, the orc license attributions for the design mechanism. We drew material from both classic fantasy imperative, but mostly Mithras imperative, and also a little bit of material, like a single stat block, basically, from BRP by Chaosium. So all three of those products are under the orc license, which is phenomenal. This is under the orc license. Like I said, you can use this to develop your own material. You just have to use this little attribution statement. It tells you what the reserved material and licensed material is. The text in this book is available for your use. We have a full table of contents. We also, at the back of the book, have an index. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Don't you love having an index? And the book itself also, if you go to basically any page, any of these bolded terms here, like Gallicano Patania is a character, Sorsha Magoran, if you click that bolded term in the PDF, it's just going to link you directly to that entry. So this has extensive internal linking within the book to make it very, very easy to navigate if you're using a PDF. If you're not using a PDF, if you're just using the Dead Tree version that we have here, if you have Jean-Luc Picard syndrome like I do, where you live in the 24th century but you need a physical book, we do have an index as well. And the extensive table of contents, like I said, this is in multiple pages, goes every heading and subheading is accounted for here. And these are all linked in the PDF as well. But the book starts off with an introduction to tell you exactly what it is and how to use this book. And I really recommend that people read this to actually get an idea of what this is and how to use it. We go through and explain, what part 1 of the book is, what part 2 of the book is, and give a small setting overview. So like I said, the cults and antagonists in this book, they're written in a way that they are general enough that you can just so easily adapt them into any kind of Bronze Age, Iron Age setting that you want to. But it's built from a set of assumptions on what kind of a world this actually is. And the adventure in the back, Shadows over Avaloc, which is like the second half of the book, is explicitly tied to what's here. And essentially, we give a very brief overview of the setting. This is not going to give you extensive lore or anything, but it is going to explain how the kind of cosmology works. And essentially, very much like myth, like all of human myth, or, RuneQuest would be an excellent example of this. You have a kind of prehistory time. You have the equivalent in RuneQuest would be something like the God time. It's a pre-consciousness world, essentially. And in this time of myth, you have human beings that get involved in kind of the cosmic struggles going on that do such tremendous acts of heroism that they experience, they're granted by the kind of creator deity this kind of apotheosis. And they're known as the 12 Saints. And so the 12 Saints, they're sort of a mix of like the Greek pantheon, the structure of the Greek pantheon, and something like the communion of saints that you'd find in the Catholic Church. So this is not allegory, and this is definitely not, we didn't write a book about Catholicism. That's not what this is. This is a fantasy pantheon, but that's drawing from, the myths that we're all familiar with. And so these 12 saints, these humans that were granted this incredible apotheosis, are basically the deities that mankind worships. And this is a humanocentric kind of setting. The 13th individual here, there are the 12 saints, but there is also this other one person who, unlike the others, did not do acts of heroism. He did acts of evil and cowardice and lies and nihilism and suffering. He had his kind of like inverted apotheosis and is the sort of kind of devil figure in this game. And that is Zahak. He is the primary kind of force and antagonist and force of evil behind everything. And he's not, twirling his mustache or anything like that. He is someone that, very much like depictions of Satan in literature, is more concerned with, like, how do I undermine everything? How do I get people to suffer the way that I suffer? It's not ever about how can I overcome things and be good. It's how do I bring everything down so that everyone can be as miserable as I am? That's the kind of demonic and evil seed. That's the thing that's at the core of all of the cults of Zahak and every single Diabolist. And so we go through and we give you just a very quick paragraph description of each of the gods, the saints, and kind of their domain, what they represent, what kind of little divine relationships they have with each other. Like you have Saint Ariadne, the embodiment of sensuality, fertility, and tremendous passion in all its forms. So this goes beyond simply like the god of sex and things like that. That's not it. That's part of it. But it's passion more broadly, contrasted with someone like Saint Malcador, who is the first founder. Saint Malcador is the patron of domain, rulership, and homeland. So he and Ariadne are constantly at odds, but they've had these trysts, and they represent these kind of two aspects of unbridled passion and the need for like hierarchy, and obviously there's a conflict there. But the idea is that these saints, ideally, you would have all the values. Every value that they represent is a good thing in this world. And that a character, you would strive to integrate all of these values. But that's tremendously difficult because not all values can be equally important at the same time. And so people will kind of worship like bundles of gods that are more important to their cult and their circumstances at the time. They recognize that all of them are legitimately, deities and whatnot. But people will focus more on certain gods. And so there's still there's a tremendous amount of room for conflict between peoples. Even things like the spirit of war, the god of war, Saint Samastina. War is something that is viewed in this world as necessary. It's to the kind of churning and perpetuation and rejuvenation of mankind. War is not necessarily always bad in like a metaphysical sense. We've also got, my favorite is Saint Sagramor the Maimed. This is the god of vengeance, righteous fury, adversity. It's really cool. I love it. It's a fantasy world. You'll get the sense here. This is a vertical slice of a broader fantasy world that we are working on for a future date. But Zahak is the absolute antithesis of all of these things. He's just the worst. And he can be easily adapted into your own game if you don't want to use this setting. If you have your own setting, very easily. He can be the demon under the earth. He can be your prince of hell, your Asmodeus, that sort of a thing. Or if you're in a historical setting that's using magic systems like you have in Mithras or whatnot, if you're using like the mythic Constantinople or something like that, you can just rename Zahak to Satan, to the devil, Lucifer. That can be your evil character who embodies all of these things, because he broadly embodies the things that would be considered evil from that perspective as well. We have a lot of original artwork in this book, but you're also going to see we have a lot of public domain works as well, because Gustave Doré, this is Satan falling from the heavens, down to earth, being cast out. His stuff is so good and it's so mythic and it fit the tone so perfectly here that we were able to have these incredible pieces, these incredible full page pieces all throughout. This is another Doré piece. Almost all of the chapter opening pieces are going to be Gustave Doré because it just worked so perfectly. So part one of Cults of Zahak is The Cults of Zahak. And this is going to open with the chapter on Diabolism. And Diabolism is our system of evil magic. And it explains implicitly a lot what these guys are about and how this works. So it's going to tell you what Diabolism is, how you gain your Diabolism skill to actually, mechanically do the rolls and things like that, and what happens to your magic points. Because in D100 systems, largely, you're going to have like a pool of magic points that are based on your power score. This is a characteristic like you would see in D&D, like strength and wisdom. There's two additional characteristics in D100 games, size and power. And so your power score determines your kind of spiritual energy that you have at your disposal. And typically, magic systems are going to use these magic points to fuel those powers. Diabolism, very similar, but there's a little twist here. Diabolism points are only granted to you when you really truly enter the cult. And the way you enter the cult is essentially when you have some moment of just horrific suffering, some crisis of conscience, when one of your love passions or your loyalty passions is on the verge of flipping to hate or something along those lines, when one of your values is in tremendous trouble. Zahak may reach out to you. This demon will whisper to you, whether it's simply in your mind or through the mouth of a goat. He will converse with you and make an offer. He'll basically say, so you see the lie like I do. Why don't you give your soul over to me? Why don't you serve me and you can have my power and all of that? Now, this is not something that Zahak can trick you into doing. You have to go in with your eyes open. People who become Diabolists, who give themselves over to Zahak, they are doing this with their eyes open. It is a conscious choice. They are choosing to walk the dark path. So this is not something where you have a conflicted villain, or maybe it's like he's just got the wrong ideas. Maybe we could open his eyes to it. No, these are people that have decided, I want you to suffer as I suffer. I want all of mankind to be brought down. I want to destroy all that is good. I want to take everything that you believe is good and twist that against you and cause you nothing but pain. So you're like me. It's this just truly devastatingly evil outlook. And as a result, so there can be, quote, lay members of cults. These would be people that are being manipulated by Diabolists, but you're not actually technically into the cult until you become an initiate. And this is when Zahak is whispered to you. And this requires that your Diabolism skill is going to be a minimum of 40%. And the way this works is when I said like that passion is about to flip, when you invert one of those passions, and this is what makes for great NPCs, and this can also happen to player characters. This is something that you could definitely use as a challenge for your own players. If that passion flips from like a love or a loyalty to a hate into that negativity, it has to be a minimum of 40%, because Zahak isn't looking for people who are of low feeling on these things. He wants people who are deeply, deeply committed in these things. That passion, that percentage rating becomes the basis of your Diabolism skill. And what happens if you have Diabolism skill of 40%? That's your entry point into the cult. At that point, 1/4 of your magic points are permanently converted into Diabolism points. And Diabolism points are going to be your magic points for the evil magic here. And it's basically like you are choosing to carve out a part of your soul to fill it with Zahak's power. And the more you advance, the more your Diabolism skill goes up, the more you advance in the cult. At Acolyte, half of your power is converted to Diabolism points, 3/4 at the level of Priest, and all of your power at the level of High Priest. So as you advance, you lose your ability to actually use any other magic system except for this one. If you join the cult, you cannot ever use divine magic of any kind. The gods will not hear your call. But the sacrifice that you make of not only of your soul here, but of these magic points, you are trading that for some very, very potent evil magic. And so basically we talk about the Diabolism point costs and what happens on various rolls. How you advance in the cult. We have a little example of that here with Gabriella. How to recover your Diabolism points, because magic points are generally going to kind of regenerate when you rest. Maybe you'll have to It depends on the setting that you're using, but they recover kind of naturally. It's your spiritual potency regenerating. Not so with Diabolism. With Diabolism, you have to actually do weird, fucked up things to get your Diabolism points back. And based on the level of weirdness and evil that you're doing, the more points you will get back. So minor acts of depravity would be sleeping with predatory animals. So if you go and basically sleep amongst wolves or lions or something like that, or you defile a grave, or you despoil a holy symbol, you get 1 magic point back. Major acts are going to give you 5 Diabolism points back. This is going to be stuff like cannibalism, murder, self-mortification sufficient to induce a serious wound. These are really destructive, bad things. And then cataclysmic acts, this is basically going to give you all of your Diabolism points back, but they're really, really bad. It's like ritual human sacrifice, inducing another person to commit suicide, or defiling or destroying a holy site. So you have to do very creepy, fucked up things in order to keep using these powers over and over. And so when any evidence of this sort of sorcery being done is evidence of other crimes. Like these are bad people. you gotta get rid of them. They gotta go. We go over things like magnitude and intensity, which is going to be something that people who play Mithras are probably going to understand from sorcery, or if you play classic fantasy, then you'll be right at home with this. It's basically intensity being the strength of the effect of the spell, and the magnitude being the kind of inherent power behind it, or the level of the spell, so to speak, how hard it is to dispel or to counterspell, things like that. And then we jump into the list of powers. And these are really, really gross. And not every cult gets access to every spell. Not every Diabolist gets access to every spell. You can learn them from the rest of the cult. Like if there are higher sorcerers than you could potentially learn some from them. But it's also like Zahak kind of grants these at will to different people as they advance. And so you can get some very weird combinations within the world. Now, the spells are all going to be based on undermining people. Things like betray thyself. The Diabolist poisons the virtue of their victim, turning their love or loyalty into hate, and hate into perverse desire. The magician who has stalked their victim and knows the passions that govern his life may use this spell to invert one passion of their prey. The Diabolist must be aware of a specific passion of the target for this to work. If they have mistakenly identified a passion and attempt to use this spell, there's no effect on the target. So basically, if I figure out that you have loyalty to your tribal chief, I can switch that through the use of this spell and invert that so you hate that person. Or I can make you love someone that you hated, vice versa. And so it changes your behavior. And if this is done to a player, they are essentially compelled to roleplay this affected passion. You can do things like causing calamity. Now, cause calamity is sort of like the Final Destination spell. You cause some sequence of events to happen on a target that causes tremendous pain and wounds, and depending on the intensity of the spell, which basically it costs three Diabolism points to do this spell at all, and then if you want to increase the intensity, it's one additional Diabolism point per intensity. As the intensity goes up, the number of hit locations that are affected by whatever the calamity is goes up, along with the damage. So if you get all the way up to an intensity of 12, which would be completely absurd, that person suffers wounds at 4 hit locations for 2d10 plus 1d4 damage, which is basically just a catastrophic, you've been pulped somehow. It's the evil mousetrap. So you can use this to assassinate people, to simply harm and torture people, cause them suffering in ways that are not directly linked to you. It's going to appear as though just a freak accident has happened, that this crazy series of calamities resulted in this disaster that hit you. Contortionism allows you to basically slip out of it's not just getting out of bonds or anything like that. It's like you can slip through any space that your head could conceivably slip through. Like your joints dislocate and you can turn your head around like an owl. It makes it very hard to hang these people to death. All sorts of really, really crazy decrepitude. It causes people to age very quickly. Deny destiny. You can actually prevent the player from using their luck point. You make them waste it. Die for me. Oh man, this one's so good. So basically, the sorcerer has to brand someone when they cast this spell, and then what that does is it basically transfers wounds over to that person, to that target, and so you can be hacking away at the Diabolist, and you're not hurting them at all, but someone a mile away or something like that, someone who has this brand is suffering all those wounds in real time. Very, very wicked. You can dull people's passions, make them indolent. Feeding oblivion. This is like you're basically consuming their magic points, their power, or their power score, actually. This is also used in the rituals for creating the idols, the demonic golems. Find the weak link. Hellfire is really cool. There's a bunch of awesome ones in here. Hemorrhage is so crazy. This one is you can make people bleed to death, basically, like very horrifically. If they fail to resist the spell, you roll 1d10, and that's the number of levels of fatigue that they take in the Mithras system. This is simulating the bleeding, though, so it's the same as the bleed special effect, but this is the level of fatigue that you go up. So if you rolled a 10, that person could just die outright because they bleed to death out of their eyes and their ears and their nose and their mouth. They're vomiting up their own blood. They can just die that way. It's like one of the more combat spells, but it's very, very gross. Inhumanity allows you to take on the features of monsters. Obsidian Dreams allows you to basically bore a hole into someone's dreams, interact with them kind of Inception style. You can do things like attempting to implant passions and doing use some other spells in here in combination with it, but there's a huge cost to that. Obliate of the Soul. This is one of the highest, most powerful things where you basically blast someone's mind and you put them in this prison where they have to face off with Zahak. And if they don't go through the moral trials, they don't succeed at the moral trials, they are like a walking vessel for Zahak's evil at that point. Like, you come back as a slave to him. Perverse Hunger. Basically, you take like a sprig of mistletoe and use your own blood, and you're spritzing it over a herd of like herbivores, like sheep or something like that, and it changes them so they become carnivorous and they have this endless hunger, and so they go around just mindlessly devouring and hunting. It's really fucked up. They will never go after you personally since you cast the spell, but it's very dangerous. So you have these like completely mad. You can do this to like horses or anything. It's really, really screwed up. Punishing the Truth Teller. Let's see, we have a bunch of ones of like shadow projection where you can basically like your shadow can leave you. You have to sit in a room of total darkness and your shadow escapes out under the door and you can go and spy on people. Scapegoating, which is basically you make someone believe that they committed your crime. You can steal people's skills. You can make a magic tree that bears this fleshy fruit that can extend your life. We have Welcome the Stranger is probably just the creepiest one in here. This is, you can basically, like the vampire, if you convince someone to let you into their home and the spell succeeds, then they don't register that you're there anymore. And you can just live with them. So you can have like your little secret base in just some random person's home, and they won't know that you're there. If they're doing their laundry, they'll do your laundry too without thinking about it. If they're setting a place at the table, they'll set one for you too, so you're eating. If people, like ask like, hey, who's that guy? They're like, oh, yeah, Uncle Bill or whatever. They'll do everything to gloss over it. And then when you leave, they will be plagued with nightmares, knowing subconsciously that they let the devil into their house, that there was the sanctity of their home was violated. They know that the fucking boogeyman was there, but they can't put their finger on what it was. These are bad people. And they make for excellent antagonists that can skitter around and be hidden in your different societies and really screw things up. And at the end of this, we have Ritual Diabolism. And these are going to be your kind of domain level spells. These are things that can really just tremendously destroy nations. Breaking the Scepter, meaning that you could basically all ties of love or loyalty to the king of the region are broken. They're nullified. And so like the kingdom is just basically going to collapse into, civil strife. You can sever bloodlines, which is really gross. and tremendously, tremendously evil, which is the point, which is why you need to kill these people. But it's the sort of thing where anyone within the domain's radius who is in anything, it's also animals, anything that is pregnant miscarries. And both parents that were involved in conception are now infertile forever. So not the entire population is knocked out of this, but anyone who is responsible for creating new life, creating that precious new human life, is now infertile, and their bloodline is over forever. At least from you better have a brother, or a sister or something, but it's done. And so this is a way of completely demoralizing a realm and potentially opening up other people into these moments of moral crisis that allows the devil to get in. You can spoil the earth, which is like just salting the earth, essentially making things so they can't grow. Unmooring a spirit, this is the idea of taking one of these ancestor spirits that looks over, one of these like humans who's had a minor apotheosis. You do these, you're not a saint, but you're a servitor of them because you did such incredible things that you have been granted this apotheosis to look over your people for all time. You can sever that tie to the people, and it just puts them into, it's like the people essentially it's over. And the only way to get past this is like you have to like form new tribes and new peoples and things like that. It's a tremendously evil spiritual crime. So these are bad people, and this is a lot of fun to use in a game because it makes tremendous stakes, and it will make your players hate these people. And that's the point, is you want them to fight evil, at least from my perspective. I'm tired of, morally gray, soulless things like Game of Thrones, which are they're interesting because the conflicts are interesting, but this I focus on the morally gray is so uninteresting to me. It's like I want something that's like, no, that's really evil. That needs to be stopped. And that's what this is for in your game. After the magic system, we have the Idols of Zahak. So this is what's going to basically be one of the primary crimes that the Cults of Zahak does, is to create these idols, these golems, that are not fantasy robots. These are not these aren't your mom's golems. These are tremendously evil things. They are the walking vessels of Zahak's evil. It's essentially, if you imagine like the biblical story of like the Israelites in the desert when they created the golden calf, it's like, what if the golden calf got up and started walking around and talking and could like do magic and all this other stuff? Like they literally created this in the flesh demon. That's what you're doing when you're making a golem in Cults of Zahak. The Idols of Zahak, it essentially requires you to commit an escalating series of truly stupendously evil spiritual crimes. The last step of which, after having acquired the appropriate materials, and there's by creating these things is the only way to get access to ritual diabolism. This is not something you can learn until you've created an idol of Zahak, because the idol of Zahak, this more purified vessel of Zahak, you commune at its feet as the dark wizard, and it imparts these tremendously evil miracles to you. So that's kind of a huge incentive for them to make these things. But you get other benefits. Based on the material type, there are changes to the wizard himself. But it's not all good. Obviously. I mean, none of it's good. It's all tremendously evil. But you have to, like I said, commit this huge series of crimes to do it. We give you sample idols, like the first being of the crystal material. We have the red lady here. And this is a crystal golem that has been drawn in tremendous detail by Dane Seipel. It's just phenomenal. He did all the golem artwork in this. We have Golems of Flesh, another Dane Seipel piece. Just insanely, insanely disgusting. This actually doesn't have 4 arms. What happens is the skin has torn off and become its own limb off of this thing. And we have the Dead Man of Golrabi as a flesh golem example. They're tremendously powerful. If you run into one of these things, it is evidence of tremendous spiritual crime, but it's also super powerful, and it has to be destroyed, but good luck with that. We have the metal golems, and we have the stone golems. And all of these things, like the stone has to be basically like the gravestones of your ancestors, or like the stones from a holy temple you've defiled, that sort of thing. I love these pieces. Just came out absolutely fucking phenomenal. And then the ancestor spirits. The ancestor spirits, like I said, are these minor apotheosized spiritual guardians of the peoples in this game. And in order to create one of these idols, you have to draw one of these spirits into the material world and either use these tremendous powers at your disposal to consume its power and breathe that power, that corrupted power, back into the golem, or you have to defeat it in combat, which is tough because these things are really, really potent. And this is where we used some BRP stuff. The Ancestor Spirit, the stats on this is like the Angel stat block from BRP. And the Ancestor Spirits, basically, you can use a spell that's going to call them down, to this act. You can either call them down by defiling some crazy place, or you can use a spell that will bring them down in potentially a kind of disoriented state. But if you fail in disorienting them when they get there, you have called down the power of heaven upon your head. And this is, a lot of cultists have died attempting to do this. But the idea of taking this spirit and then shoving it into this prison, it's not simply like, oh, it's trapped in there, can we get him out? No. This is a corruption of the Ancestor Spirit. It is a permanent metaphysical change that is made. You have actually done something to taint the spiritual order of the world when you do this. So these are bad people. They're bad. And then after that, after we have the idols, we have the sample cults. And the barbarian cult it's roughly kind of Viking inspired. But again, this is general enough that you can use it in pretty much any setting. And this is the barbarian cult. It goes over the overview, the mythos and history, the nature, what do they, what do they believe, how is the cult organized, and then important figures in the cult. And so it gives you the high priest down the line to the people who are the least important. And some of them, that kind of low tier person is not a full initiate yet. They are still a layman. They haven't heard the dark whisper, but they're on the way. They are being manipulated. Some of them are all Diabolists, but this cult is like, this is how they're insidious. And I'm only going to tell you about this one in great depth, because I think that the others, it's something you should read for yourself. They're very cool. But this one is essentially started by this guy, Fargrim. And Fargrim was this tremendous warrior. He's the 6'5" Giga Chad Viking warrior that no one can defeat. And he basically wastes his youth in war without having a family. And then one day on the battlefield, he takes this grievous mortal wound that ends up castrating him. So he's sterile. He can no longer have children. And he's finally realized, like, holy shit, like, I'm not going to have a legacy. And this drives him to in just incredible amounts of pain. And he becomes more ferocious on the battlefield. He's trying to die. Like, at least give me a warrior's death and let me go out in a blaze of glory, because I can't handle this terrible tragedy that has happened to me. But he doesn't die. He keeps winning. He is just this powerhouse, and and people, they're all cheering for him and everything. They raise him up as like he's on the war council and everything. But this is driving him insane. This pain, knowing that he has been passed over, and so this deep resentment grows within him. And he consults the goddess of the priestess of Samastina, the priestess of war, and being like, why is Samastina not granting me this death on the battlefield? And the priest, of course, is like, dude, it doesn't work that way. Like, you're you don't get it. Like, like, of course, dying in a righteous battle, that is a good thing, but that is not the only thing in life, and all this stuff. And this festers until he finally basically gives himself over to Zahak and has this attitude of like, if I can't have my children, I can't have my bloodline, no one here can have a bloodline either. And so he starts this conflict between these two tribes. It's like Hatfields and McCoys, basically, that hate each other so much. And the war between them becomes so vicious. Fargrim and the others in the cult that come after him that are basically always adding fuel to this fire. It's like whatever started this conflict has been completely forgotten, and he's driving them to try to absolutely basically genocide each other. And from his perspective, he's in one tribe, and then there's cultists in the other tribe as well. They're working together internally to have these two cults destroy each other. His ultimate goal is the destruction of everyone. He wants to do basically like this kind of genocidal thing, which is from the perspective of the morality of this world is like, well, what the fuck is wrong with you? That's not what war is even about. And you can imagine this like historically, you can have people, because they're all of the same religion, technically. There's one religion of man. It's like England and France were once both Catholic at the same time, and they went to war all the time, but it would never occur to them, to the English or to the French, that like we should kill every English person or we should kill every French person. So this is this like truly existential like horror that he's trying to unleash. And the plan being to eventually use that sever bloodline spell. The cult's been kind of partially exposed already. Someone found the golem. That's been destroyed. This is not all is lost here, but he's still working. One of the tribes is really on the ropes, and the other has the upper hand. And it's this big juicy conflict that you can get involved in. And we have these characters here that are all really cool, and they all have their own kind of twists to them. Like this next guy, Arfast, is somehow, the site where they destroyed the golem, he's been able to go back there, and that's awoken something in the earth. And so he's gaining these like kind of necromantic powers. It's like this only kind of like little side plot. You have this guy, Hammond, who was basically like chopped up on the battlefield by the cult, but they tortured him and put him in this state to where he's completely deformed and miserable, but they let him live, and he has to live with the cowardice because he lived on he watched all of his friends die on the battlefield, and he didn't lift a finger because he was so afraid, and so he has to live with his own cowardice, and he's using that to like gain pity and sympathy in this other tribe, and undermining them from within. And you have this kid whose father has been killed in this conflict, and he looks up to Fargrim. He doesn't know, that the truth of the cult, but he's on his way, and he's basically looking for a father figure. He's looking for someone to step in and show him the right way, and he's trying to get Fargrim's attention. And he says, okay, well, Fargrim's the most fearsome warrior. What do I have to do? I have to become more fearsome. And Fargrim can see this, but he's ignoring him because he knows the kid is just going to keep doing worse and worse stuff. And so you have all of this going on, two separate tribes with a bunch of different characters in them, all with secret agendas that your players should not be aware of. It tells you about how to gain membership and lies and blasphemies, what skills and whatnot. You get all of these, but then you get an encounter table that can basically seed all of these ideas. Just get your players' foot in the door so that they can get involved in all of the conflict and all of the adventure that's included in these short pages. It's really good. It's really, really good. The second one is going to be a civilized cult. This one is also very cool. They are not in such a powerful position. They have not yet been able to create their idol, but they're working on it. And there's a whole bunch going on here. They're basically like these tradesmen, these super elite artisans that are part of this fraternal order in the city that does public works, and they're undermining everything. And again, we don't tell you what city this is. This can fit in anywhere. And like this with the barbarians, like I said, it's kind of a loosely kind of Viking vibe, but there's nothing here that's tying it to a particular setting other than the thematics of, we talk about, that we mention the priestess of Samastina, but that can just be whatever your god of war is. It doesn't matter particular to your game that it is Samastina. So I love this stuff. We have Amalia, this beautiful wench who's evil. The encounter tables, again, for the civilized cult. We have a nomad cult. This one is so fucking cool. They do have a golem, and they're out in the wilderness, and you can run into them, and they're coming back to civilization to try to get more people to come with them with their twisted ideology. Their origin is sort of like this twisted Donner Party sort of a situation. Very mythic, very cool. It has their cult idol listed. Any of the cults that have an idol active, their idol, its statistics, its powers are all listed. Encounters for each one. And then we have a primitive cult. And this one is probably the most overtly hostile because they are totally sequestered out in the wilderness and they don't let outsiders in. So this is like if you're doing your jungle hex crawl, and you run into these people, it's going to be bad. But once you find them, they have to be destroyed. They're so wicked. They're so disgusting. And they, of course, have a giant flesh golem. Oh, God, what did we call it, too? I'm trying to remember. The cult idol, the Fleshborn is what it's called. Yeah, and so you've got encounters with the Fleshborn, and don't run into the Fleshborn. It's really powerful. And then after those, the cult entries, we have, again, wonderful artwork by Gustave Doré. This is, again, all of the chapter openings for all of the cults. These are all Gustave Doré. I think this is from Paradise Lost. And we have a lot of the biblical illustrations from the Old Testament are here as well. Like the one for the civilized cult has the Tower of Babel in the background. And it's not about finding the specific art piece that says, oh, this is the nomad cult I have here. It's about communicating the mythic vibe. And man, oh man, Gustave Doré's illustrations. Yeah, I mean, he's one of the greatest artists of all time. And the biblical illustrations and Paradise Lost and everything is so good, and it's so perfect, and it's so detailed that it's. I love the way the book turned out, and he's got these pictures of the Crusades, and these are actually two separate pieces. They look as though they are a single 2-page spread, but they're separate art pieces that just fit together so perfectly. It's just amazing, and this is in here to give you the vibe of what comes next, which is the adventure portion of the book, which is going to have an entire city called Avaloc. And Avaloc is this kind of mix of like Jerusalem and like Arthurian Camelot. It was like Art Deco fantasy buildings. It's awesome. And the idea of what the king looks like. The king is out on crusade right now against the evil, vile Sobek lizardmen. And so then we have part 2, Shadows over Avaloc. This is the adventure portion. Now, this is a cityscape. This 2-page spread, this was done by Dane Seipel as well. And this is to give everyone an idea of what these Art Deco cathedrals look like, what this mythic world looks like. And it's his line work is so insanely detailed. You can get a magnifying glass out and see right here, this tiny little building all the way over here has, like the slats on the deck. It's crazy. And this is a Dyson Logos map, essentially to give inspiration about what the city layout is and what the scale of it is, because it's a very large city. There are big walls. There's multiple temples everywhere. But this Mithras is not like a dungeon crawler or a city crawler. It's not like our Shadow Dark products or anything. So the locations are not keyed. So you get to choose kind of where things go. And there are some places where naturally it makes sense that certain locations would fit on this map. But this is more to inspire than to be a direct, like, okay, and here's this point of interest, and here's this point of interest. But the City of Saints, we give you a brief history of the city of Avaloc. What were the immediate conflicts? This is not 10,000 years ago, the city of Avaloc was... It's not it. This is the recent timeline. What has happened? Basically explaining that Avaloc was founded by mankind. It's the jewel of civilization. It's the biggest achievement that man has made in carving out a place for themselves in the world. It's the holiest site in the world, which you have pilgrimages of humans from all over come to this place to visit these holy sites. But the city was invaded by a different species, the Sobek lizardmen, who are more advanced on a civilizational scale than humanity. They have more powerful technology, powerful magics that humanity doesn't understand, came in and conquered the place for a long time. But within the last 50 years, the humans were able to wage war and retake it back from the Sobek. But the Sobek have left their mark on it and a stain on it. And the king, realizing that he's basically got one crack at bat left, he's like, I've got one big war left in me. The lizard men they're going to come back. They're going to come back. They're going to put us all in chains again. And we can't do that. So we have to destroy them. So he rides out with the armies and has been on crusade for like 5 years. And in his absence, the city is coming unglued. And there's a lot of legitimate material social problems that are happening that are just a result of his absence. But beneath that, there is a cult. And this is the adventure here. And so we go through kind of district through district. We tell you what what Avaloc today is like, what the vile root of Avaloc's problems are, who's responsible, and then we start going through district by district and telling you about points of interest, what the flavor of this place is. We have random encounters, tell you this is a way to draw in your players, or even if your players are already in and drawn. drawn into the conflicts that are here, things can happen that you don't have to pre-plan, and they're things that are going to generate the adventure. And so the way the adventure is structured is very much like how we did the Shucked Oyster. It is a big network of NPCs that all have conflicting motivations, incomplete information about each other, and they're all helping one person steps on someone else's toes. That is the design principle for this. However, the cast of characters in here is more than double that of the Shucked Oyster. It is tremendous. It's huge. And so we've got all of these different locations and characters that are included in the random encounter tables that will draw you in and get you involved with NPCs organically. Like we said with the Shucked Oyster when we made that book, you don't have to use all of the characters. And frankly, you shouldn't use all the characters. That would be insane. It's that we're providing you enough that it's going to give you basically interconnected dominoes that'll generate conflict, but you don't need to use all of them. You don't need to use every character. And your players aren't going to always bite every baited hook. But we go through, and you'll see there are a couple places where we do have some blank space. And part of that was because we wanted the tables to stay for layout purposes, to stay unbroken. We didn't want them spanning across multiple pages. And when it came down to it, that caused some blank space. But we didn't want to simply add filler art. And at that point, when we were looking at it, it's like we could commission something here, but it's not going to be, it just made more sense to have a little bit of blank space. Because something that does irritate me, I can show you an example. Something I really don't like, and it's a trend, is that people think they really have to put art in every tiny little blank space, and you really don't, because it's like at the end of the magic chapter, right here, there's this little thing. Now, we could have found some tiny piece of art to put here, but that's not even a quarter of a page. And so whatever you're going to put there is going to be so small. It either has to be like an item. You could put like a spear or a scepter or something like that. Or you're going to have some little scene, but when they're this small, it's oftentimes you can't really get much out of it. If you do something really detailed, it can just be, it just looks like filler. So we decided to go for negative space as opposed to that. So if you're wondering why there is some blank space there, it's because we didn't just want to pack this with art that didn't matter. We wanted the art to give you exactly what this is about, and I think we did a tremendous job with this. And I love this. This is also proof. You can take public domain stuff and make it work in a game, because some of the stuff that's available under public domain is the best art that's ever been made by human hands. But yeah, random encounter tables for each district, and there's a lot of them. I think there's like 12 districts or something like that. And at the end, after we get through this, we have the final random encounter table and the Act of Diabolism table. The Diabolism table, basically on every random encounter table, it's a D12, and if you roll a 12, it says Act of Diabolism. Roll on the Diabolism table to find out what happened. And so this is like, maybe the characters are already kind of on the trail of the cult, or they don't even know what the cult is. But when you roll a 12, there's a black magician out there who's doing black magic in the vicinity of your characters. Roll a 1. A nearby building is burning with hellfire. Stone, wood, and metal are all consumed in a blaze that will not stop for 1 hour. 4. Women shriek as a passerby begins bleeding from every orifice, affected by hemorrhage. A young man begins to scream as his body ages rapidly. He eventually crumples to dust in front of the crowd as he has been killed by decrepitude. So there's immediately a crime happens. Something really fucked up happens. Or if you roll a 2, 1d6 horses, tainted by perverse hunger, rage through the street. They attack and devour any in their path, causing panic until they are slain. So this is like when they've turned the horses into carnivorous predators and they're running down the city streets. It's like, so you can get there's chances for this weird stuff to happen. And we don't tell you who did it. We tell on the next chapter, we go through and we tell you who's a Diabolist and who's not, but we're not saying who did it, and it can happen in any district, and it can be any of these characters, and you can make your own Diabolists to fit in here as well. It's really, really cool. So the same design principles as the Shucked Oyster, with networked characters, random encounter tables that get you involved. Again, every single one of these things is going to be clickable. Click it in the PDF, you go to the relevant entry. You should read the whole adventure first, though. It's important. Then we get to the Web of Intrigue. The Web of Intrigue is the final chapter, and these are all the citizens of Avaloc, the important characters, and it's all alphabetical. And it's going to tell you the Beowulf Skinner, very cool character. I love all these guys. They have substantial write-ups. They're all connected to different people, so they've all got relationships. A lot of times it's in one direction. There's lots of mysteries going on. Each character needs something that the players might be able to provide them with. But eventually you'll find a character here, Ilios Spiteri, Diabolist. So you already know this guy is one of the bad guys. He's one of the cultists. Gallicano Patania, also a Diabolist. Let's see, we've got some more really cool. There's some great little art pieces in here as well. These are Dean Spencer pieces. This one, though, this Dean Spencer piece is so good. It was great, and it fit perfectly for this character, Obadiah Cord, who's also a Diabolist. But it goes through and it gives you, there's so much to work with. This is Samson and Delilah, another Gustav Doré part that just worked, piece that just worked perfectly for the part of Oscar Semmelweis. There is so much going on here. It's huge. I can't remember how many characters there are. It might be 36. I can't remember, but there's a lot. And this is not Gustav Doré. This is Albrecht Dürer. I believe this is Saint Jerome. But he just worked perfectly for one of the characters in here. There is an idol. And then we finish off with kind of the spirits, the spiritual guardians of mankind, these guardian angels, the ancestor spirits, another Gustav Doré piece, and an index. So all in all, this adventure is huge. It's from page 73 to 125. So this is like, 75 pages of material, a full city basically for you to explore, random encounters to get your players interested. Really interesting characters. Lots and lots of interesting characters. I'm so fucking proud of this. It's so good. And I really, really hope that you guys take a look at this because it's a tremendous adventure. It implies a whole lot about this wider world. And this is one piece of a setting that we've been working on and playing in for a very long time. And we nailed the villains first. And you'll see, because this is Orc licensed and we weren't using like a lot of the magic material from the full Mithras game, a lot of the characters, some of them have magical abilities. Like Abragastes has these magical powers we see here. Special abilities. Yeah, he's got these different abilities that we made in place, but we say basically, note, these are a sampling of Abragastes' powers. He's an archmage. The GM is encouraged to give him all of the power appropriate to his station. So if you went through and you were kind of like, yeah, these are really cool powers, but you know what? I'm using the full version of Mithras. Could I just like give him sorcery from Mithras? Yes. Yes, you can. Don't be limited by what we've written here. This is inspiration and gameable and usable. But if you have, or even BRP has a lot of different magic systems. If you have some magic system that you want to use for the other characters, great. You can absolutely do that. But the huge benefit is that you've got access to this magic system, all of this Diabolism that your players have never read. It's not in any of their books. They're not going to know what the fuck is happening with all of these powers that you can use against them. It's really, really awesome. They're going to, I think they're going to enjoy it, as long as they don't die from hemorrhage. I really hope you guys check this out. So Cults of Zahak, by the time this video is published, hopefully the physical version will be available. The PDF is already up. You can get that there. We will also have pre-generated characters to go along with this shortly in a little PDF called Men of Avaloc. So you can just hand your players some characters and start playing Mithras. All you need to do to play with this book is to get a D100 rule set. You probably already have several on your shelves. We encourage you to get Mithras Imperative for free off of the Design Mechanism website or from Drive-Thru-RPG, and go get Cults of Zahak. I give this a 10 out of 10 because I wrote it. Me and Nick wrote it. But this was a tremendous accomplishment for us. I think that this is something that I really hope that people like because I love it and we use it And man, oh man, I can't wait to return to this world because it's so evocative. And we've come up with there's so much more to add beyond this. It's going to be really, really incredible. But it's perfect exactly as it is. It works to slot into a game. And it's a tremendous book of villainy to add to your collection. So thank you very much.